Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week 4, episode 4 of 9 weeks in NESCAC Football Podcast. It's unofficial, but it's officially time for week 4 alongside Dave Bagatelle. I'm Chris Grace. Glad to be back with you. Dave, we've been waiting for something crazy to happen through 3 weeks, and finally happened. We had a big upset last week in Middletown as the Bates Bobcats knocked off the Wesleyan Cardinals. We now only have one unbeaten team left in the NESCAC, and that is Trinity. Plenty to cover from last week, plenty to look forward to for this coming week. We've got interviews with Matt Coyne, our first recurring guest on the 9 Weeks podcast. We felt like we had to bring him back after their big win against Wesleyan. We're also going to talk with former Trinity All-League defensive lineman Cooper Mandel and get an insight on what makes the Bantams program special. We're going to do that. We're going to give you your power rankings. We're going to preview week 4 and more, and that's all coming up on 9 Weeks NESCAC Podcast. Great to be back with you as always. Dave, real quick, just to jump into it, last week, you look at the score lines, you look at the games you picked, really everything went as we expected. We didn't know what was going to happen with Trinity and Williams. Williams jumps out to a 14-0 lead, but then boom, here comes Trinity. They score 45 unanswered. They win the game. Middlebury, Colby kept it competitive for the 3rd week in a row. Unfortunate for the Mules, still looking for their first win of the year. Bowdoin, Hamilton, 2 teams looking for their first win. Bowdoin had just enough. Not really a big surprise for us. Tufts, Amherst, that was the game we really circled. Tufts came out after the Wesleyan game, and they dismantled Amherst, handed the purple and white their first loss of the year, 25-0. And then, of course, Bates on the road beating Wesleyan for the first time in Middletown in over 40 years. Their first win in the series in nearly 20 years. Coach Coyne getting their first win in 11 games. That's got to be where we start. Just really a wild result in week 3. And the season now we start really to have a feel for where all these teams are.
Yeah, very, very surprising game in Middletown for so many reasons. We're going to talk at length about this later, so we don't need to, with Coach Coyne, we don't need to get into a lot of the details. There were, Wesleyan, we had their opportunities. They had the ball on the 1 yard line, couldn't get it in. There were a couple of opportunities in the end zone where there were toss-up balls that didn't get caught. There were turnovers, and obviously Bates had a couple of really big plays. Two long runs by Ryan Linsky, longest pass in Bates college history from Bagatelle to Gleason. It was a freshman, I believe. Bates, you and I have talked about it. What Williams is for Coach DeCenzo, Wesleyan is for Coach Coyne. This is a game he circles on the schedule. We talked about it last week. This is a game that if I was a Wesleyan fan, it would scare the heck out of me. And there you go, bang. The only bright spot, I think, for Wesleyan is they have one loss. Obviously, they beat Tufts and Middlebury, and they're still in the mix. And things are within their control. Obviously, team in front of them is Trinity, and they still have to play Trinity, obviously not for another 6 weeks or so. So we'll see how this plays out, but they definitely, Wesleyan still has things within their control.
Yeah, I think to that narrative, what makes the league so interesting right now is you only have one unbeaten team through 3 weeks, which is statistically almost impossible, but that's where we stand right now. But the teams that are 2-1 all control their own destiny. Middlebury still plays Trinity. Tufts plays Trinity this week. Obviously, Williams lost to Trinity, but Williams still has a lot of big games left on their schedule, so there's still everything to play for. The big result that stood out to me this week, I think that needs to be touched on, is Trinity 45 and Williams 14. We thought that this game was going to be a big test for Williams. We talked to Coach Raymond last week, and looking at the score while I was calling the Wesleyan Bates game, Williams jumps up 14-0, and we're thinking, oh, we might have something here. But Trinity, they got a score when they were down 14-0, and then they had a defensive score, and just like that, they flipped the script, and they completely dominated the second phase of that game. We didn't know where Trinity was. Obviously, replacing Spencer Fetter, tough challenge. They've got great skill players on both sides of the ball. with a lot of experience and a lot of inexperienced players on the line, in particular on the defensive line and on both lines. They're starting to figure out their identity a little bit different. And Trinity, obviously, it's more of the same from the team in Hartford.
Yeah, as you said, they do have a lot of talent on offense. Obviously, two really good receivers in O'Brien and Clapp. Clapp, first team All-NESCAC guy last year, and O'Brien's emerging, one of the faster guys in the league. Obviously, they got DiNapoli, who's a first team All-NESCAC guy at tailback, and then Xander Zabrowski, who was there watching for 4 years. He knows the system, played a little bit. A lot of it was in mop-up time, but he knows the offense, and it's taken him he's off to a pretty good start. Actually, he's off to a really good start. And I think as the season goes on, watch for him to just get better and better. And then they have, I think, 10 new starters on defense, and it seems they're really starting to be clicked for them. And I think they're going to become a more and more dangerous team as the season moves on here, Chris.
Yeah, and I think that the last result that we should touch on looking at these games, Tufts 25, Amherst 0. Coach Savetti's guys really showed up and played, and they put the hammer down on the Mammoths. It was a great result for Tufts, as they are who you thought they were going to be going into the season, and still everything to play for Tufts as they host Trinity this week.
The story of this game, surprisingly, the Tufts offense did score 25 points, but I think the story of the game was their defense. And maybe the story of the game was Amherst finally playing a somewhat decent team. Their offense just looked like it's looked the last couple of years. It looked very lethargic. They have the All-League Offensive Player of the Week, a quarterback, the previous week, and this week they pull them and they go to another quarterback. They make a quarterback switch. The Amherst offense has struggled the last 2 years and hasn't looked really good at all this year. This week they look terrible. I think they had 119 yards of total offense. I'm not even sure that's even possible, but that's what they had. I hate to be harsh on it, but that's just not going to get it done in the NESCAC. And Tufts obviously shut them out and really handed it to the Mammoths.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, quick shout out, NESCAC Man Defensive Player of the Week, Coyne Price, getting that 9 weeks NESCAC bump. Great young man we had on our opening episode as the Polar Bears picked up their first win of the year against Hamilton. So full props to Coy. But as we transition from last week's results, Dave, I want to head over to the power rankings, and we look at the power rankings. What stands out for you in terms of movers and shakers from week 3 in the NESCAC Man power rankings as we go forward to week 4?
Yeah, I think probably the most controversial thing will be Wesleyan losing and still we have them in the second spot, primarily because the two teams behind them, Tufts and Middlebury, they beat them both. So you can't really, how can you move those two teams ahead of Wesleyan? I do think that there's a pretty sizable gap between Trinity and Wesleyan. Trinity captured all 10 of our first place votes last week, as we talked about. It was a split vote. 6-4, and those 4 voters decided to cast their ballot for Trinity this week. Trinity's a solid number 1, and then there was some movement here or there within the rest of the rankings, but I think it was marginal movement, and this week we'll shake it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think before we head to the break and we get ready for next week's games, that Trinity Tufts game is going to be a great indication of where we're at in this league, because I think for Trinity, their first big test of the year against Williams, they passed with flying colors, and it'll be really interesting to see if it's more of the same, if they've, really changed their identity, especially at the quarterback position, with more of an athlete playing quarterback than just a traditional pocket passer, and what the ceiling is for this Trinity team. And for Tufts, listen, we've seen them in person. This is a Tufts team that's very talented. They obviously have a signal caller that's as talented as anyone in the league. And you're playing at home in a big game in front of your home crowd. That's going to be a great challenge for Coach Devaney and the Bantam. So we'll certainly preview that as, I would imagine, our game of the week. And we'll do that when we come back with more 9 weeks, a NESCAC podcast with Chris and Dave right after. Welcome back to 9 weeks, a NESCAC podcast alongside NESCAC man Dave Bagatelle. I'm Chris Grace. It's our pleasure to welcome in our first recurring guest of the year. We're trying to spread the wealth around here, but when someone gets a big victory, first big upset victory of the NESCAC season. We had to bring him back. Biggest win of your coaching career, Matt Coyne. Welcome back to the podcast, coming off a big time upset over Wesleyan in Middletown, 24-13. First time the Bobcats had beaten Wesleyan since the early 80s in Middletown, and the first overall victory over Wesleyan since 2004 or 5, I think. Just huge. And then for you guys, first win of the year. You've been close in some games, but just as someone who called the game, congratulations. It was a great team effort. And I know some people on this podcast would have liked to have seen the result go the other way, but I think everyone on this podcast can agree that your team got a hard-fought victory. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for having me back on. And I'm just really proud of our guys going out there and competing. They competed really hard, and happy we were able to be on the right side of it this time.
Can you just real quick just talk about what the emotions were like on the trip home? Because it's plenty of a trip home. Obviously, when we talked the first time, you said, my goal is to win an NESCAC championship. So I know your goal is not to win one game, but you got to win one game and one big game to set the tone for the rest of the year. What was the messaging? What was the bus ride home?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where as we start to build this thing, and then we talked about on the first appearance, was we're a very young team with some really great senior leadership in the small amount that we have. But as you go to and you see progress in your program, you need to see those stepping stones be achieved. And this was just one of those where we were able to go get a win against one of the best teams in the league and on the road. And it really validated some of the cultural aspects that we've instilled in our program and the work that we put in. And those guys now see what can happen when you buy in, believe, have confidence in your preparation, and you just compete. So I think it was big. The bus ride home was great because I'm not shying away from it. We had 11 straight where we didn't get a win. And it's hard to win a football game. When you think about there's 8 units that can step on the field, 88 different combinations of people at a time to win one game. If one person messes up or one coach makes a bad call, you lose the game. And for us, it's very hard to do that. So we just wanted to celebrate the fact that we got the win. And for us, it's just progress in what we're doing. And that bus ride home was pretty special with the guys.
Yeah, there were so many moments in that game. Obviously, Chris and I were both there, and I had the honors of actually stepping in for Coach Whalen and helping it out, call the game in the third quarter. So it was great to get that angle from up top. A lot of really great individual performances. The running back, Brian Linsky, had another great week, leads the NESCAC in rushing. Rosic, a linebacker, had a great game. Just a lot of your offensive line played great. Is there anything that and then of course your quarterback was 7 for 7 with the longest TD, I think, in Bates history, actually TD pass. And he was coming off obviously a tough week and had a great game. Is there any one individual performance or one unit performance that you think was key to the win?
I think it's a holistic effort. I'd talk about our special teams units, to be quite honest. I think that was one of the areas in our first 2 weeks that really put us in some tough spots, just field position wise. And I know we had the one partially blocked punt there towards the end of the game that we were fortunate to get decent rollout in. But overall, I think we were decent there in those units, and we still have to get better. But that sort of helped us with field position, and just that third is so important for us. And then I think, obviously, I'm super proud of Colton for how he responded. He's had a tough couple of weeks to start the season, and really stepped up in some big moments there and making the right plays in the right times. And then obviously our defense. I think our defense holistically in the first 3 weeks has been what we've been leaning on. And they're a bend don't break type of defense, and they defend that big rectangle as much as they can. And we saw it, whether it's on our 1 yard line or their 1 yard line, it doesn't matter. They defend, and they've been building some great confidence over the first 3 weeks, because they've gone against some really good teams. And obviously Wesleyan's very potent on offense. Last week with Trinity as well, they played well. So I think it's a whole team effort, and there's so many things that go into making it possible to be able to upset an opponent on the road. So for us, those are some of the areas that I think really helped us this past weekend.
So speak about Colton for a second, because for those who didn't watch the game, you guys rotated quarterbacks. You actually started Seneca more to start the game. Wales called him Seneca Wallace, which was funny. And obviously you're trying to find a spark in your offense. You're trying to utilize your athleticism, but it seemed pretty evident the first drive that Colton was in, you guys seemed to function better in terms of ball handling, getting the ball out on time. You still rotated guys. You still rotated them at different points in the game. I'd love to hear your thought process. Was that just game plan script, or when did you feel like, okay, Colton is there, we're just going to roll with this, and moving forward, is that how you're going to play it, or is it still to be determined?
Yeah, I think for us, I think both guys give us some very unique characteristics in each of their roles. I think some of the things with what Seneca can do, he's one of the best athletes in the whole entire league. I'll tell you that. He's growing as a football player and as a quarterback. And I think sometimes when you see some of the things maybe not operating as smoothly on certain times for either Seneca or Coyne, there's a lot of other components that factor into that. Again, I think we're still a very youthful team, especially on offense. So there's a lot of little mistakes that people might not see that sometimes come off as when you're the quarterback, you get blamed for a lot of things. That's just what the honor is of holding the ball in every play. But we're going to continue to work guys into the situations that call for it and developing our program. I think, especially when you're in an option offense and you're running a lot, you got to have multiple guys ready to go and developing and making sure that you're taking some of the heat off of certain people in certain situations. And I think those guys do a really great job in the quarterback room, and I'm fortunate enough to coach them to just how they play off of each other. And there's no egos. And that's the biggest thing. And, Coyne's been such a great leader to help Seneca develop, JP and Sean, the other two quarterbacks in our room right now. And he knew that he didn't play his best in those first 2 weeks. And he knew that we had to mix some things up. But then the way he practiced and responded, it's just great to see that happen for a kid who's such a great leader and cares about our team so much and the culture and changing this thing. It's just karma for him because he does a great job. And we're going to continue to put guys in situations where they'll succeed. And you'll see both of these guys because they both give us extremely different type of advantages in certain situations.
And then sorry, Dave, I know you got something, just quick follow-up. Do you see the flex option as a program builder, or do you see this as like in 5 years, head coach Matt Coyne is going to still be running this offense? Or is this gives us the best chance right now to be successful? And if you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
No, I'm very comfortable saying it. I think, for us, like we haven't even tapped into what this offense can be yet. We're so early in the infancy stages of it, but it's a different variation once you see like some of the things that we'll be able to do down the road with it once we develop it and it grows and blossoms. I think this is an offense you can live in, and I think you can grow within the passing game inside of it. And really it helps you recruit certain skill sets for certain positions to fit in because it forces defenses into some different things. It's hard to play certain styles of defenses against this with the different formation shifts and motions and the amount of responsibility we put onto some on-field checks and things like that for defenses to do where we just feel like that gives us an advantage and our kids really buy into it. And like I said in the first episode I was on, I think it culturally fits what Bates is. It's who we are. I mean, we're tough, we're gritty, we're blue collar, and we're going to continue to try to run the ball. And we're going to find ways that we can get the ball into our playmakers' hands, and we're just going to keep getting better within our system. But I think we're going to live in this for a little while.
Yeah, it's so. I made a comment about it at some point. At one point, that one of the hardest things is, and my high school ran the veer in high school, so I know that it's hard for the other team to practice against this, to have a scout team simulate this and have it at the right speed, right? Because how many teams in the league are running it? So that's definitely a challenge, I would say.
100%. I think that's a big thing, and it's. At times, unless you play this week one, you only have a few days to prepare for it too. And the amount of wrinkles you can put into it are endless, to be quite honest. And I think we're just going to continue to develop it. And I think Coach Thompson, he's really the one that birthed this thing. Coach Thompson, Coach Watchers, Coach Brown on offense. I think they've done a great job. And like I said, we've only been in this thing for 6 weeks, 7 weeks. We just really started to scratch the surface, and our guys are starting to understand it more and understand the different type of sets they can get and how to handle these certain things. But it really gives you a lot of answers. It makes the kids have a lot of the answers within the same play calls.
Yeah, just the main question I was going to ask you, I just did wanted to follow up on the option offense, but the main question is there were a lot of big plays in the game, obviously. The 4th and 1 that Wesleyan had, the 13, and Ryan Gleason scores the longest touchdown in Bates College history in terms of reception. Was there one play in the game you can look at that was a turning point or really cinched the win for you guys to look at?
And I think looking back on it, I think it really comes down to Marcos Ruiz making that field goal. I think that's a moment in the game where...
Yeah, that was a bold call.
It's tough, because I think everybody in the house thought we were going to go for it, including Wesleyan. They had to run a D lineman off the field. They had probably goal line setting called, but we made the decision for Marcos to go out there. I believe it was
it's like 38 yarder,
and it's on grass, and we haven't really kicked on grass, But that kid in practice, he's just a different type of kid where he's just got this zoned in mentality, and he's a tough Jersey kid. Played at that prep down in Jersey.
He played at Bosco, I believe, like his brother.
But he transferred to St. Joseph. Sorry, not prep. He transferred to St. Joseph Regional. SJR. He was SJR. That's where he finished his career. And he's brothers of Ramon Ruiz, who Bates Alum and worked with us at Wesleyan when I was there. And I think just having that confidence, and really when I was thinking about it, and really, if you never give the kid the opportunity to find out what he's capable of, then why do you have a kicker? You know what I'm saying, in that moment? Because at some point down the road, we're going to need that, whether it's 38, 28, 27, 40, whatever it is. I think just having that and seeing that kid go out there and make that, and understanding that made that a 2-possession game. And that decision was because I just think that momentum wise, like, you go for it on 4th and short, and we knew they were going to have an 8, 9-man box, and it was going to be a test of wills. But like, you get stuffed there, the momentum gets changed completely. And I wasn't even thinking about Marcos missing it, you know what I'm saying? But I think when you look at those two situations, the momentum changes a lot more when you get a 4th down stand, when you're trying to hand the ball off, rather than if something were to happen on the field goal. So I think that was big there. But there's a ton of big plays. And I think, honestly, when you look at it, Wesleyan has a great defense. Their defense is unbelievable. They really had 4 big plays against them. You know, if you take away those 4 plays, I think those 4 plays were for $187. We ran 40-something plays. We ran 43 plays for like 120 yards. So that's just the story of football. It's just like you have these certain plays and moments, and we capitalized on them. But for the whole game, that defense is very good, and they're strong, experienced, and they're a problem for everybody in this league. And we were just fortunate that we were able to hit on a few long ones.
I think we could spend a lot of time talking about a few plays on offense and taking advantage of opportunities. And obviously you're back with 2 great reads. It's just bouncing it outside and taking advantage of some pressure from Wesleyan where they confused their gaps on a run blitz. But to me, what won the game for you guys was after the first quarter, after really the first drive and a half, your defense settled in, and there was no way that Wesleyan was going to be able to get inside the 20-yard line. It felt like your linebackers and your front were so confident, and your assignment football was so solid. I thought even take that red zone possession, Wesleyan could have had 6 downs and they weren't going to score there. Obviously there was the long pass play that was, I don't know if it was it looked like it was probably a blown coverage, but if you take that play out of it, after the first drive of the game, your defense was spectacular all day long, tackling, rallying around the football, not giving up big plays. I thought Wesleyan ran the ball pretty effectively on the first drive of the game. After that, you held them to under 2 yards a carry, constant pressure on the quarterback, but also confusing them. I know you guys showed you didn't play cover 2 leading up to the game. You played nothing but cover 2 the entire game. I think full credit to your defensive staff and your defense. I think that's where the game was won, just my perspective, because Wesleyan's a big play offense. They're going to have times where they don't look great throughout games, but they hit big plays. You guys took that out.
100%.
Speak on your defense real quick.
Yeah, I think Coach Warehout and that staff, Kyle Suter's joined us in our secondary. Coach Rip's been with me forever. Coach Edge is our corners coach. Those guys have done the growth from last year to this year. And some of the things that we really targeted was explosive plays. Last year, we gave up a ton. I think it was a high number. It was one of the things that we tracked all preseason and all of our practices and every single thing you did scrimmage wise. And for us, I think we gave up 1 explosive run and 4 explosive passes in the game. And I believe Wesleyan ran about 80 plays, somewhere around there. And for us, I think it's just, again, the experience of a year, that first year when we're starting a ton of freshmen, and we still have some youth on that side, but there's a confidence within it. Those sophomores now have taken the next step, and they really harped on the fundamentals and just understanding that if you're going to get beat, make it be a 12-play drive that finishes in the end zone. And at any point, like field goals for us, if a team gets in there 5 times and comes away with 15 points, great. You know what I'm saying? We can give up field goals and survive still. And I think there was just like you said, run into the ball, tackling, just fundamental football that we really just weren't good at last year. We needed to develop through building and practicing. They did a really great job with that. The play you're talking about with Chase's 87-yard touchdown, it's a really tough combination of the coverage we had. And that was a good play call. And they got our safety, and it was just a switch vert type deal. And again, like what we harped on is, hey, we probably got to make a tackle at the 50-yard line. We got juked out, and then it goes for another 50. So it's one of those where I thought in the beginning, like that first drive, and that's the biggest thing we talked about with Wesleyan was Coach Ludden, they do a great job on their first drives. If you look at Wesleyan on their first drive, if you can hold them to 3 or less, that's huge because they are so scripted for those first 10, and they score a lot on their first drive. So we were like, hey, we can come out of there. I thought we just came out a little hesitant and we didn't have the physicality in the first 7-8 plays. And we were really fortunate. Mike Spencer made a big play down there in the red zone there to force the field goal right away. And then after that, they settled in, like you said. And we just said, hey, let's try to not give up as big plays. And there was times when there's 50-50 balls that we were fortunate to come away with the win on and then breaking the passes up. And I think for us, it's one of those things where we mixed in a little bit of man that we didn't show before just to try to throw Nico off because, what he does so well is he just scrambles around and he makes you have to stay sticky. And we worked scramble drill all week of just staying attached to, that was a big thing for us, staying attached to receivers because a lot of those big plays come off of scrambles. And all of a sudden he sees someone cut loose down the field and he's able to get him the ball for 20, 30, 40 yards. But we just didn't give up too many of those. A couple comebacks for 15 yards on scrambles. I thought the guys did a really good job of just trying to play to what their strengths are and take away as much as possible because it is a very potent offense.
Yeah, that bend don't break mindset won Middlebury League Championship last year. So it definitely works. So just to shift gears a little bit, you got to bounce back and you've got a, great win, but you got another big game this week. First CVV game, night game up at Colby, quick drive, not too far, be a great atmosphere. I imagine you got to keep the kids up coming off a first win. You don't want to get complacent and fall back into old habits. What's that like? How do you manage that, Coach?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, again, it's a big win, but it's just a win. And that's what you have to say. You got to celebrate it for your 24 hours. And then we really got on our guys this week so far. Like, really harped on them for things we should have played better with from last week. And now understanding like this Colby team, I don't care that they're 0-3. They played some really close games with some really good teams. That team is physical. They are big. But right now they have a very experienced team that understands this rivalry. And it's a huge deal for us to be able to have to go up there again on the road again, night game. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. And it's the first stage of our CBB. And for us, I think for me, I'm excited to see how our team handles it because it's also a next step in our program to find out where we're at. Can we respond on the road again against an experienced team and a good team and sit there and try to figure out how to way to get one more point? So for us, I think the kids understanding when you go through a long stretch of not coming out on the right side of the outcomes and you get one, that feeling becomes addictive. And it's like, how do we get back there again? And how do we put the preparation? And we talked about it all week with the guys, like the will to prepare to win is more important than the will to win. That gets you your confidence. I'm excited about it. We worked really hard in practice so far this week, and we know it's going to be an extreme challenge, just like every week is in the NESCAC. And for us, just because you get one win, it's not, okay, hurrah, like it's still a win. It's a big one. We got to move on and find out how to get two. And I think that's just another step in our program's development. And I'm excited to see them compete because it's going to be the rivalry games. It's throw everything out the window. And we haven't been able to get Colby since 2017. There's another thing. And for us, they're very well coached, a very good team. And we have a big challenge ahead of us.
Yeah, I think in many ways, it's the perfect game to have after the Wesleyan game. We saw this with Wesleyan in week 2 after they beat Middlebury. They played Tufts under the lights at night. So if you're not fired up as a NESCAC football player playing a game under the lights against a rival school, when will you be? And you look at Colby, it's fool's gold. You look at the teams they've played in the first 3 weeks. No one's had a tougher schedule. They played Trinity as close as anyone has played Trinity. They played Williams down to the wire, and they played Middlebury to a 1-score game. Those are 3 of the 4 top teams in the league, and they were right there. It's just the schedule creators are not, no schedule is created equal. You guys know this. You've had a tough schedule to start the season, right? It's a great opportunity for your team, and we'll be paying attention because we want to see if you guys can build off of that. But it's one of the fun things about watching a program grow, and I think that's why Dave and I both wanted to have you back on, because we're trying to give people a look at the NESCAC in its entirety, and there's all sorts of different narratives. There's teams that win championships, and there's teams that are trying to build programs, and we're obviously very invested in seeing where your program goes. I know that we've taken up a lot of your time. We appreciate how gracious you've been with your time, but we'll certainly be paying attention, and we'll be paying attention throughout the course of the season. And for me personally, I wish you the best of luck. And I, as a broadcaster, really enjoyed a lot of things I saw from your team, and I can tell that the future is going to be bright for you guys. So best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Best
I
of luck,
appreciate
Coach.
you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Bags. Thank you so much. Appreciate what you guys are doing, and go Cats.
All right.
Good luck this week, Coach.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is Coach Matt Coyne. We'll be back with a little bit more in 9 weeks of NESCAC, your unofficial NESCAC football podcast. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to 9 Weeks, an unofficial NESCAC Football Podcast with Dave Bagatelle, Chris Grace with you. It's our pleasure to welcome in former Trinity College Bantam, Cooper Mandel. Cooper, thank you for joining our podcast. Cooper finished up last year in Hartford with the NESCAC co-champion Bantams, and we're pumped to have a perspective from the capital city of Connecticut coming in on our podcast. So welcome. We certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
So Cooper, first and foremost, I think for Dave and myself, it's important to get someone from Trinity's perspective. Talk about if you can summarize what you think makes Trinity special from a football perspective. What do you think it is that you guys do differently in Hartford than other programs around the NESCAC are doing that's separated yourselves throughout the last decade or so?
Yeah, so this is the message we give to all our first years when they come in, when we come in for that first camp. It's about expectations. Under that was said, once Coach Devaney kind of took over back in the early 2000s, that standard was championship plus. You have to live up to that standard every day from the first day of preseason to when we finish the season against Wesleyan. Every day you're this in our mindset during preseason, we're playing the best offense against the best defense. Everyone chins up, you're only getting better.
Yeah, speaking to that, obviously you guys have had a great run. For whatever reason, it's not as if Trinity has won 5 NESCAC championships in a row, but it feels as though every single year the league goes through Trinity. Talk about a little bit, if you can. I think there was a big change for Trinity this year, is that replacing Federer, but it seems like they haven't missed a beat. Talk about Double Z. Talk about what he can bring to the table for the Trinity offense and where you think the ceiling is for this Bantam team.
Yeah, so obviously replacing Spencer Federer, not something you're going to be able to do. He's arguably one of the greatest quarterbacks in NESCAC history. My roommate for 2 years. I played with him all 5 years. But he's a very different player from Xander. Xander's a lot more athletic than Spencer ever was. Probably great. All but Xander can make not maybe all the same throws. He can make just as many throws as that offense needs. And going off of that, he's got great weapons on the outside, great weapons to build. Adding in that athletic ability and that ability of Xander keeping the ball and scrambling for 15 yards or making the play longer, getting out of the pocket. I think he's just added another dimension to the offense that was last year. It is scarier this year because you can make plays that's.
Yes, Cooper, you and I are both North Jersey guys, right? So we have a lot in common. You grew up in Ramsey, and I lived in Mahwah for 23 years. I think you know that. So we know, I think, a lot of the same people. So little North Jersey question. What's a bigger rivalry, Wesleyan Trinity or Mahwah Ramsey?
I'd probably say Mahwah Ramsey. I've seen some of the things that go down at those football games, especially in the hockey. So it's hockey games seem that crazy because that's when you add in all the football players into the stands. So I would honestly say the Ramsey-Mahwah Ramsey. But no, the Trinity Wesleyan rivalries, it's always going to be there, 20 minutes away from each other. And our breaks, there's always going to be that at this taste for each other, but also that mutual respect of playing in the NESCAC and knowing that whether you're going down to Middletown or you're going up to Hartford, it's going to be a battle.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just in my time around the league, there have been very few teams that have come into Middletown and given Wesleyan problems. But it seems like every time that Trinity has come in, the last time Wesleyan beat Trinity was actually in Hartford. But you guys have had great success playing that last game of the year on the road in Middletown. It's a different environment. It's grass. It's late in the season. Talk about the perspective in that lead up to that game, what the Trinity perspective is. And because I know with Wesleyan, they have the whole little 3 thing. But for Trinity, the Wesleyan game has got to be the game, right?
Yeah, so obviously when we're there, we're focused on the next game every week. But in the back of our minds,
right. There is
in the back of our minds, we're always thinking about Wesleyan at the end of the season. I played 2 games down in Middletown. The first one we won, I believe 14-7 was the final. That was just a battle. We made a goal line stand at the end of the first half and were able to sweep past one more touchdown. And then last year, when we just were able to that game, there's turnovers. We ball bounced the right way a couple times, but yeah, the perspective is that we get off our turf field for that week. And when we're running 11 on 11, we get up onto the grass, get ready to get our feet in the dirt. and just get used to that grass field. And it's just a mentality that, honestly, we think about how they're making us play on grass instead of letting us play on turf. When we know the hidden turf field back then. So we use that, as well as the fact that we just don't like Wesleyan and they don't like us. And we just need to prove that we're better than them every year.
Yeah, it's a great rivalry. I was fortunate enough to play in a few of those games myself and watched a lot as a fan. And it's actually great to see. And it's great to see the NESCAC sort of preserving that rivalry by always keeping that as the last game of the year. Obviously, last year was a little different because of the storm and the unfortunate what happened up in Maine with the shooting and everything. But it's a great last game of the year. Let me ask you a question. You ended up going from North Jersey to Trinity. How'd you make that choice, and how'd you end up going from Ramsey High School to Trinity College?
Yeah, so high school was definitely a different football experience for me. I was starting quarterback for 3 years at Ramsey. And then I was getting recruited as basically an athlete. A lot of schools were looking at me for outside linebacker, some for tight end. Yeah, and by the end, I was basically down to Middlebury, Trinity, and then surprisingly in that bunch, Ithaca, up in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The reason Ithaca was in there was the possibility of going to the NCAA playoffs. That was one thing that just always stuck in my mind, being able to get to do that. But the end, I think that what got me to Trinity over anywhere else was an overnight visit there. It offered something that I didn't really see a lot of other places offering, which was that social aspect that goes along with, well, maybe not as storied academics, still very good academics, and as well as that football legacy that was living there. I wanted the ability to win, the ability to also have a college kid, and also to a great degree.
Speaking of that degree, don't shortchange yourself. Trinity's a great school. And I guess my question for you now is, post-Trinity, post-football, what's next for Cooper?
Yeah, so I ended up being a mathematics major, which obviously at a liberal arts school, it's not everything you want it to be. And somewhere that would be more of a business school or something you could do with that. But right now we're in the process of getting into the insurance industry as a back office analyst, a lot of predictive modeling, things like that. So that's where we're going from here.
Very cool. Dave, I know you got some quick fire questions for Cooper. So if you got them ready, let them rip.
Yeah, so we do a thing every week, Cooper, with the players we have on. We call it 9 weeks, 9 questions. So we're going to do rapid fire. Take as long as you want for each of the questions. It can be really quick, or if you want to elaborate a little bit more. And actually, Chris asked the first question. So he asked, what's your major? So that's question 1. So we only have 8 more to go. So are you ready?
Ready. Let's go.
And I think you covered the next one, but what's next after football? But I know you mentioned what you think is going to be the immediate job, but what's your goal beyond that? Where's Cooper going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah, so the end goal actually is working in the NFL as analyst. I had a couple interviews with the Washington Commanders and Cincinnati Bengals with more experience there. So we're just going to build up the work experience as we go, and hopefully we can break into that NFL analyst role.
Yeah. So there's a Wesleyan guy down in Tampa, Shane Scannell, who's, I think, director of pro personnel or pro scouting. So if you want an intro,
he's a guest on the Chris and Coach podcast.
Yep. Shane's a great guy, and let me know if you'd like that connection. Definitely make that happen.
Absolutely.
So as far as the next question, who's your role model, Cooper?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say my role model would be essentially a mix of all of my grandparents. They all came from very different backgrounds, or my grandparents all brought different aspects of character and different characteristics that I've taken bits and pieces from them and tried to work that into my character and my value system. Just how they all lived the extent of their life. Really, it's what I try to model myself after.
Awesome. It's a great answer. Shift gears a little bit here. What was your favorite pro football team?
Baltimore Ravens. Ravens.
How did that happen?
Grew up loving the way Ray Lewis played football and fell in love with that defense. Hugs. Darius Webb, Elvis Duerville, Lodi Nada. Fell in love with that defense probably back when I was 5 years old and just never looked back.
Smart guy, not being a Giants or Jets fan. I'll tell you that right.
We're definitely
Easy.
Hey, I'm a Giants fan. We'll leave it at that. What was when you were at Trinity, what was your favorite class, Cooper?
say the favorite class I took was either mathematical modeling or spectral graph theory.
Okay. It sounds like fun. And what's your favorite food?
Favorite food is a really well cooked steak. Really well cooked steak. Not well done, but just very well.
Awesome. Like the River Palm or someplace like that?
Like that. Deep fried. Yep.
Yeah. We know all the spots. Those are good spots. Exactly. I think you answered the next question. If you weren't if you didn't end up going to Trinity, where would you have gone? I think that you pretty much nailed that question earlier, but you can elaborate if you want.
Yeah. So one school that I really was looking to hopefully get into early on was Johns Hopkins. That was where I wanted to go. It was down right by the Baltimore Ravens as well, which I was excited about. And then I really thought about it, and this kind of ended up being the deal with Middlebury too when I was looking there. And I decided I really didn't want to be the dumb kid at a really smart school. I really liked being the smarter kid at the kids. So I decided against those, and I really liked being at Trinity.
Well, it seems like it's worked out for you, definitely so far. So what do you think the outlook for Trinity is the rest of the year? They're sitting right now. They're 3 headed into game 4. Big game this weekend against Tufts. I think you said you're going to be up there for it. So
yeah, I'll be going up. I'll be going up to Boston. I'm actually lucky enough. My brother's still on the team, so I'll be going to, I think, 4 of their final 6 games.
Awesome.
So I think for Trinity, the main thing, and I think they figured this out last week, was how to evolve their game plan and play calling to their new team. I think the first 2 games, a lot of it was based on last year's offense.
Mm-hmm.
Explosive it was. I think last week they really figured out how to excel with these new pieces they have, especially in the offense. The defense lost 10 of their 11 starters last year.
Yeah.
And we lost our entire D line. So I think that's just going to take more experience, especially with the inside guys and the D line stuff. But the secondary is going to make plays. They've been making plays all year. It's got a lot of speed. They've got a lot of good pass rushers as well. So we have been getting a lot of sacks, especially playing from ahead, forcing the other teams into downs. I think the main thing that they need to focus on is getting the ball to their. And you saw that a lot in this last week, getting the ball out there, letting those guys make plays. Sean O'Brien, Max Roach, Matt Laughlin, especially Tyler Napoli, and the younger running back, Coyne, coming up as well. I think as long as they're getting the ball into their playmakers' hands, those guys are going to make plays and they're going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, it's a little bit like pick your poison, right? O'Brien and Clapp, who do you double cover? They're both really good, right? Different kinds of receivers, but both excellent players, and they give Xander a couple really great weapons there. And obviously got great running game with the first team NESCAC guy back there. And by the way, we should mention Cooper's no slouch. He was first team All-NESCAC last year, defensive lineman. Came in, as he said, as an athlete. Kudos on that. Not easy to make first team All-NESCAC, especially in the defensive line. There are a lot of really good defensive linemen.
Do you know how you go from an athlete to a first team defensive lineman in college?
Yeah, you eat a lot.
You go to college. Yeah, you just go to college. Yeah.
Well, I ended up
you go to Trinity where they have kegs in the social house. I can't even think.
Yeah, and hitting the weight room doesn't hurt either there,
yeah.
Chris. So
he's doing all right.
So I actually showed up at Trinity for my freshman year preseason. I was still 17 years old. I was like 215 pounds going there through tight end. I ended up getting cut my freshman. So I got cut, and then after the season, they suggested trying out for defensive line. Offseason, I ended up gaining 30 pounds at the COVID year. It was just basically a year for me to practice some learning defense. And I ended up just learning all the defensive line positions. And my junior year, as much as it likely hurt the team, or starting nose tackle towards ACL in 17, they had me playing nose tackle at 140 pounds, and I actually did that whole season. And then eventually was moved out to defensive end. I was able to get better and keep getting bigger as well as my career went on.
I gotta tell you, that's rough sledding there. Having to gain weight in college, it's tough. It's a tough game you're playing.
Oh, definitely.
That's great. So the last question for me. What does Cooper like to do in his free time?
I love watching any sport that's on, honestly, whether it's baseball, football, hockey, basketball, any season, I'll watch anything. And I love playing poker, whether it's mainly just house games with buddies. But if I can get 4 guys that want to play poker with me, we'll be playing all night. I love playing.
Yeah. That's that's the math major in you right
absolutely.
there. 100%. I'll have to play sometime. Love that.
I love it. So. Cooper, I got one last one for you. True statement. You're not under the gun here, but do you see there being a scenario where Trinity is tripped up this year? And if so, where do you see that happening?
You asked me before the Williams game, I would say 100%. I had confidence that they would figure it out, but from what I'd seen in the games against Colby and Bates, I didn't have a lot of trust in their ability to stop the run or ability to run the ball. After the last 3 quarters of the Williams game, where it seemed like they figured it out and that initial test they had to overcome in the first quarter there, after they were able to do that, I find it hard to believe that if they keep that same mentality, which again, is hard to do for 9 weeks, that happened to us when we got blown out by Williams that one year. To keep that same mentality for 9 weeks is tough. It's hard to do. They're able to do that and able to keep challenging themselves every week and not taking anyone lightly. Then I would see the only possible one, I think, could be going up to Middlebury, just because that's always a tougher place. I know Wesleyan's had great success there, but going up to Middlebury, we've always put there. So that would be the only one that could be me. But I think really
interesting. There you have it. I think this week we're going to talk. We have talked, and we'll continue to talk more about it during this episode. But Trinity and Tufts, and in outer Boston is going to be an interesting game in Medford. So we're going to cover that a bunch. But Cooper, we appreciate your time. You guys like to get the perspective of players, current, former, as you guys are the ones that keep this league going. So we appreciate your time. Best of luck with everything when it comes to your future job positions. Hopefully you find that dream job in the NFL. I'm sure you will. You're a smart guy. But for now, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. So for your time here, we certainly appreciate it. And we'll catch up with everyone on the other side. For Dave and Cooper, more with 9 Weeks in NESCAC right after this. Welcome back to 9 Weeks NESCAC Podcast, along with Dave Bagatelle, Chris Grace back with you as we get ready for our 4th week out of 9. Dave, we look at this week's matchup, some interesting games standing out at me. The game of the week we'll touch on later, but we're starting to see some separation here, and I think there's a little bit of something in every one of these games. First game we'll start with Bowdoin at Williams. Got a Bowdoin team that's been competitive in all of their games, taking on a Williams team that is going to have to bounce back after a tough defeat against Trinity. I think this is an interesting matchup. I think this could go either way.
Yeah, Bowdoin got their first win last week. Obviously, Williams took it on the chin against Trinity. My feeling is here, I think Williams bounces back. They play much better at home. Long trip for Bowdoin. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to come down to, can Williams stop Bowdoin's running attack, which I think they will. And they're going to force, Bowdoin's been a little bit better in the air. They've gone away from that 2 quarterback system. Robbie Long, it was last week and had a pretty good game. I think that Williams will get their running game going. I think relatively low scoring game, but I think Williams wins by less than a touchdown.
Yeah, I think, you know what they say, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterback. So once they settle into the 1 quarterback, I think that gives them a chance. I think Bowdoin's defense is always going to give them a chance because they create havoc in the early stages of the games, and it's just how the opposite team responds to that. It's an interesting matchup. Yeah, I think Williams at home gets the job done, but I wouldn't be shocked to see the Polar Bears come away with a victory. But I think, safe bet, I would lean at Williams at home. Next up, Wesleyan trying to bounce back after just a very difficult defeat, and they travel to Clinton, New York to take on Hamilton. I know you'll be there. How are the Cardinals going to respond taking on an 0-3 Continental team?
Absolutely, positively must win for Wesleyan. Goes without saying. They need big bounce back. This is one of those games where they've got to come out with a lot of emotions and play angry and take it out on Hamilton. Hamilton doesn't statistically match up very well against Wesleyan. Wesleyan runs the ball very well. Hamilton defense is not really good against the run. Hamilton has also been playing a couple quarterbacks again, going back to that. They've struggled running the ball. Wesleyan's defense is playing well. I think Wesleyan wins by somewhere 17 to 21 points, somewhere in that ballpark. I think they win 31-14, something like that. And I don't feel that this game there's going to be much in doubt. I don't think it's going to be a close game for a while. I think maybe Hamilton scores a late touchdown against Wesleyan's twos or something. So I think Wesleyan travels up to Clinton on the road and plays the way they played their first two games and gets it done.
Yeah, I would be shocked if that's not the case, but I think this is a great opportunity for Wesleyan. Listen, this is still a Wesleyan team that is struggling to find an identity offensively. Obviously, Chase Wilson has been the dominant receiver in the NESCAC so far this year, but they're looking for a supporting cast. And for the Cardinals, this is another opportunity to establish some other guys. I think they've been great on the offensive line. I think their defense has been overall very good this year, but they're looking for someone other than Chase Wilson to step up. And Chase has been a little shaken up. He hasn't been 100% since the first game against Middlebury. So some great opportunities. I think a guy to keep an eye on offensively is Sam Ween, slot receiver that can make an impact for Wesleyan. And I think for the Cardinals, they just got to find some consistency on offense, because if you watch the game against Bates, Nico Candido was running around the entire game, just fighting and battling and trying to extend plays, but that's not sustainable for 9 weeks. So it'll be really interesting to see how the Cardinals go on that one. But I agree with you. I think they win this one comfortably.
And just a word on Chase. Last year, he had a career day against Hamilton.
Yeah, I was there for that one.
He had 4 top 10 catches. He went crazy. And Nico had a big day also against Hamilton.
On the turf in Middletown.
On the turf. They're playing on the turf up in Clinton. Hamilton hasn't rushed the quarterback particularly well. And if Nico has time and sits in the pocket, his guys will get open for him.
Yeah, I'm going to drop a note to Coach DeCenzo and tell him that Trinity advises that they play the game against Trinity on the turf at Citron Field. That would behoove the Bantam. So I'm going to see if that works out. I don't know if he's going to prove that or not.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work out.
Try to double stamp that one. I don't think it's going to happen either, but that's the
You know what that means? We don't cut the lawn for another 3 weeks before the game, I think.
That's right. There's no we without Wesleyan. You can't.
Right. Got to get one in there. Yeah,
exactly. That's the one. And that we is sponsored by, hey, if you want to sponsor this podcast, please reach out to us at 9weeksnescac@gmail.com.
Okay.
Next game we're going to look at is Middlebury and Amherst, 2-2-1 teams. This is a big time game in terms of the standings of the NESCAC. Middlebury, we saw it watching the game a couple weeks ago against Bowdoin. They seem to find their identity and find their sea legs. Now Middlebury's trying to listen. Middlebury, in spite of everything, they control their own destiny. This is a team that's had a lot of success against Trinity throughout the years, and they still have everything to play for. For Coach Mandigo's team traveling to Amherst, I'm sure Coach Mills is going to have his team fired up, but for Amherst, they just seemingly have just really struggled to find any consistency or cohesion on the offensive side of the ball, and that's really where they've struggled.
Yeah, their defense, as typically happens, has been very good. They play very good defense. Their offense, Amherst's offense, struggled last week, and Middlebury has looked better. Their receivers, led by Ammon, have looked a lot better. The offensive line has been giving Brian Ranson time to throw the ball. So I don't think they win by 30 points or anything like that. I think it's going to be a relatively close game. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Middlebury has a very good defense. Obviously, they've got a number of all-league guys on that team. So I think Middlebury goes on the road, gets the win, not by a lot, but they're my pick this week in this game, Chris.
And Bates and Colby, we touched on this. We talked to Coach Coyne. This, I think, is a pick'em game. Bates comes in at 1-2, Colby 0-3, but probably the two teams that have had the toughest schedules to start the NESCAC season. I think this is anyone's matchup.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting game to watch. We'll be watching this game while we listen to the Yankee game Saturday night, multitask on our way riding back from Clinton. I think this is going to be a close game. I'm going to go with the home team. I think Colby gets win number one in a relatively close game. I think the game will be less than a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if Bates pulls it out. But Colby's been good. They've flirted with the win, and I think they get win number one at home this week, Chris, under the lights.
Yeah, I could see where you're coming from. I think winning means a lot, and I think teams that find a way to win find a little bit of momentum, and teams that haven't figured out a way to win sometimes get some scars. So I think this is a big game for both teams. I'm just really interested to watch. Out of loyalty to our only reoccurring guest, I'm just going to go with Bates in this one. I think they figured out a way to win the game. Let's call it 13-9. Bates on top. Final game.
Another opportunity for me to pad my lead on you, Chris.
Yeah, I have many things. I do not have the experience that you have, sir. So I wouldn't even.
You're okay. You're only one game behind so far, so we're right on it.
Listen, but if we were counting first halves, I'd be up by a game. So it all evens out. Last game, our game of the week, Trinity 3 taking on Tufts 2-1 in Medford. Tufts coming off their most complete, best football game of the year against Trinity team who scored 45 unanswered. This is one of those games. There's going to be athletes all over the field, a lot of talent on the field, and I think for me, this game comes down to who can establish the tone early and see what the atmosphere is like in Medford. But I think Tufts has a decent chance in this game.
So the last 4 games that these teams have played have been decided by less than a touchdown. Obviously, Tufts has home field advantage, and they're both coming in with big wins. Tufts had a really nice win last week against Amherst, bouncing back after the loss to Wesleyan. Trinity, obviously, after being down 14-0, 45 unanswered points against Williams. I think it's going to, again, be a less than touchdown game, but I think Trinity's got some really good momentum. Going to this game, they're playing better and better every week. I think their defense is now starting to get more and more confident. Medford, Ellis Oval, that turf is really fast. We saw it last year when we were up there to watch the Wesleyan Tufts game. And Trinity's got some really great playmakers, as we discussed earlier. And I just think that's a difference. I think it's going to be something 28-24, 24-21, something in that range. I'm going with the Bantams in this one, Chris.
All right, this is where the bread is buttered, my friend. I think that this is a great opportunity for Tufts. I think that Trinity throughout the years has always found one game where you're expecting them to roll through their competition and they stumble in the middle part of the season. I think this is that game. So I don't know if it's just because I like Coach Savetti. I don't know if it's because, as we mentioned before, Coach Savetti went to what school?
I think he went to Trinity, yes.
Exactly.
See where I'm going? Went to Trinity.
Yeah, you see where I'm going. I'm taking the Jumbos. I like the Jumbos 28-21. I feel decent about that. I think that there's a really good opportunity to come away with this win. So that's my stance, and I'm going to stick to it.
Just for the record, I like Coach Savetti a lot too. Doesn't mean I don't like him because I picked the other team.
That's fine. We like everyone here.
I wouldn't be surprised if Tufts pulls this one out. I just going with the Bantams here.
Yeah, listen, you're a Bantam fan. I understand. So you got to make your picks. It's all good. Dave, final thoughts. I think the league is displaying its parity. You look at just from 1 week ago, we didn't think we'd be in this position. And I think what's really cool, as we mentioned, is that there's still everything to play for.
Yeah, I don't know about parity. We've talked about what that term means, but I think there's a lot of good competition. It's hard to believe that after this week, we'll be almost halfway done with the season already. We'll be 4 weeks in, which will be 4 of 9. You're looking quizzically at me. It's almost halfway.
So that's just me watching the Mets lose, Dave. Don't mind me.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry to see that. I'm looking up at
it's okay. It's okay. Keep it moving.
It's not over yet. Look at what happened.
Keep it moving. Keep it moving.
But in any event, yeah, I think the season, there's a lot of football left to be played, obviously. And there's a lot of competitive games. Middlebury, Trinity still to come. Wesleyan playing Trinity, Wesleyan and Williams. You have all the CBB games. And we didn't mention that, by the way. I think that's what makes another thing that makes the Bates Colby game interesting. It's the first of the CBB series games. And of course, they're playing under the lights Sunday night. So yeah, there's a lot of great football left to play, and looking forward to every week we learn a little bit more about these teams and lets us hone in on who the players are and who the teams are to watch going forward.
Yeah, certainly it should be a captivating week 4, and we look forward to recapping it a week from now. So I think that's going to do it for this episode. We'd like to thank Coach Matt Coyne from Bates for coming back for the second time and spending some time with us, and Cooper Mandel, former Trinity Bantam, for joining us. And of course, I'd like to thank Dave Bagatelle. And as always, if you'd like to contribute to the podcast, hit us up at 9weeks NESCAC on Twitter, 9weeksnescac@gmail.com. And if you feel the need, at the Real NESCAC Man, if you want to talk to the Real NESCAC Man, or at Chris Grace 82 on the platform formerly known as Twitter. But for now, it's time for us to sign off. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your supporting this podcast, and we appreciate you being fans of the NESCAC. Till next time, for Dave, I'm Chris. Enjoy the rest of your week, and enjoy the weekend at NESCAC football. There's only 5 weeks left after this one. So long, everybody.